Hey everybody, old guy, old camera. Today, or over the next few days, however long it takes, the Minolta XG-1. Found this in a thrift store. Go figure. 25 bucks. Now, the XG-1 is an early 70s Minolta camera, and I think it was late 70s to early 80s. And how you can tell that it's a older version of this camera is the logo. It's got the old school Minolta logo on it. At some point during the life of this model of camera, they switched to the other Minolta logo that's got the O that looks like some kind of rising sun. If you look at the newer cameras like the Maxim and some of the newer X700s, you'll see what I mean with the logo. I didn't even realize that, but I know the old Minolta, the SRTs, you know, they have this font. My daughter's a graphic designer. She's really into fonts. I like this font better. It's more vintage, I guess, than the newer Minolta font. But anyway, this isn't a discussion about fonts. It's a discussion about the XG-1, finding it at a thrift store, seeing it for $25, thinking to myself, I've got a lot of old Minolta cameras that aren't, and these aren't very full featured. They're consumer level cameras. I'm a consumer level. And, but I looked at the lens, and the lens is a Minolta Rocore X 50 millimeter. Okay, 50 millimeter. We've had discussions about 50 millimeter lenses before and how they don't take very interesting pictures in in my hands, because I'm not apparently creative enough. But I've had discussions about perspective and how a standard lens is very much like the magnification of our eyes, and it's just what we see every day, and it's just not very interesting. Unless you're very creative, which I don't think I am, but whatever. But this is the 1.4 aperture, maximum aperture lens, which means it's the upgraded standard lens. You would have had to pay extra for this, and it's a slightly higher quality lens, a little heavier, a little bigger than the standard lens that came with it at the time, which, depending on the model and the year, it could have been a 2.0, it could have been a 1.8, it could have been a 1.7. There's all kinds of, a lot of, especially in the 80s, the standard lens was a 50 millimeter 1.8. But this is 1.4. So, 25 bucks. The lens is worth 50, probably, to the right person. So I went ahead and grabbed it. But it's a really, the leatherette finish, or whatever it is, it's very soft. It's almost, it just feels good. It feels kind of nice. I don't know if it was recovered at some point over the course of its life. I'm cutting my head off. Let me slouch. It's my normal sort of pose anyway. But it's very nice. It feels good. It looks new. It looks like it might, if it was used, it was not very often. Anywho, the interesting thing about this camera, like I said, it's sort of a consumer level. It was not a very fancy camera. It's an aperture priority camera, which means you set the lens at opening, and the meter and the camera's very small computer, if it's even a computer, will choose the appropriate shutter speed to give you a proper exposure. Once you've set the film speed, which you can do on this dial right here, that's 400. I've got black and white film in here this time, which adds a whole other level of complexity to this project, but because I'm going to develop the film myself, and I've got some old chemicals I'm going to pull out and try to mix up and see how that goes, and that'll be part of the video too. Not so much the entire process, but I'll take you through it a little bit. I'm not trying to do a darkroom video. This is about a thrift store, a camera, putting some film in it, and taking some shots. And I'm going to go out here in the drizzle here shortly on a drizzly day because, darn it, I just want to get something going here with this. Aperture priority. You can use it in full manual, but the stupid thing about this camera is the meter will not work. It doesn't tell you anything when you're in manual. You literally have to put it in auto, which is aperture priority. Set your lens opening that you want. If you want lots of depth of field, you would use 8 or 11 or 16. If you want very shallow depth of field so that everything in the background's out of focus, you would try to use 1.4 or 2.0. And then in auto, then you hold the button down just a little bit, not enough to take the shot, but you'll see the meter light come on, and it'll show you the corresponding shutter speed for that aperture given the light conditions and your film speed. So then you got to put it into, basically take it out of auto and rotate the dial around to the shutter speed you want. And the other lousy thing about this camera is the meter in the viewfinder. It's got 1,500, 250th, 125th, 60th of a second, 30th of a second, ... 1. So for whatever stupid reason, if your shutter speed that is chosen by the camera, based on your aperture setting in auto, is less than 30, it's going to show you that the light's kind of down there in the ... but it won't tell you what it is. So it could be anything from 15th of a second, an eighth, a fourth, a half. It does show 1 second, and if you're below that, it would blink. And the same thing on the high. If you chose a lens opening, and the meter thinks that the shutter speed that'll give you a proper exposed shot is higher than the camera's ability, over 1,000, it'll blink at you, and it actually won't let you take the shot. So this isn't really meant for someone who's looking to be particularly creative and particularly hands-on with the camera. This, I don't want to call it a dummy camera, but but it's a nice camera. You wind the film, you hit the button, it goes off. We'll find out how accurate the meter is, because I'm not going to use a handheld meter. I'm just going to rely on the camera's meter and hope for the best. I mean, it is 40-ish years old. I put some fresh batteries in it. The 2 LR44 button cells go in right here. This little doodad right here, I believe, is something you would take off if you wanted to mount the motor drive, if you bought a motor drive. But there's film in it right now, so I'm going to go out, take some pictures. It has a self-timer, but almost every SLR has a self-timer. It's really not that much to it, but we'll see how nice the lens is if I can keep the rain off it. I'll be back. Here. Well, drizzle on the lens isn't good. I did find out that I was trying to take a backlit shot, so I was trying to overexpose, and I got up over what the meter thought was possible. It was telling me that the shutter speed, based on the aperture that I had set, the shutter speed was going to be over 1,000th of a second, and it wouldn't let me take the shot. So it sort of protects you from, overexposing or underexposing or whatever. But what I was able to do is I adjusted the A to +2. When you do that, it'll let the camera overexpose by 2 stops. You do that by pressing that little silver button right there, and then you can adjust the wheel. So that was the way I was able to take the shot at the exposure I wanted. So that's kind of a neat feature, I guess. Let's get a shot of the old guy swing in the rain. Well, let's see. Do I want the background focused? Do I not want it in focus? I don't know. Let's go for a smaller aperture. We'll go down to, oh hell, we'll do that for 11. You'll see. Whoop, see the little red light in there? It's not doing it now. Let's see. Let me look. Red light says somewhere between 125 and 250th of a second. You can't see. So it's in A, so the camera's going to automatically choose somewhere between 125 and 250th of a second. And let me see, find a good. You like this? Let me focus here in the rain. And take my shot. As it starts to fall on my camera. So let's open it up. Didn't get too wet. I tried to keep it dry, but had it under my shirt while I was walking around. Could have picked a better day. Could have left, going out and found a beautiful place. Who's got time for all that? And I will say, I struggle not having something really interesting to me to take pictures of. You know, I mean, I've got a few acres here. I've got stuff laying around. It's what I see every day. I'm just not inspired at all. But I have seen so many photographers, videos of photographers going out and just taking pictures of the most random things at the right angle with the right light, and it's amazing. And you look at stuff and you're like, wow, why can't I do that? What's wrong up here that I can't see what they see? Anyway, I'm digressing again. Pressing the little button on the bottom to release the sprocket inside here, because if you don't and you try to wind it, you'll rip all the sprockets holes in the film. So open to my little handle here. I'm going to start cranking in the... Uh-oh. Something's not happening. I don't feel any tension. I don't hear any film. Okay, one of two things has happened. One is that the film that I loaded from a bulk loader, and that was a mess because I loaded it backwards and I had to put it in the, I'll show you that, into the dark bag and flip it all around. But anyway, the tape popped off. So when I wound the last picture, it all ended up on the take-up wheel. So now I'm trying to rewind it, but there's nothing, I can't wind it back because it fell off. Or, and this has happened to me before throughout history a few times, my worst memory of it is at a Bangles concert when I had got my camera in and was taking pictures of the Bangles. Look them up if you're too young. It's a good band. Walk Like an Egyptian. The film tab, when I wound the film the first couple times, close the back, wind the film, the tab pops out. So I'm winding pictures, I'm taking shots, and it's not drawing the film across, but I'm pretty sure I saw the handle moving. You know, I showed you this trick in other videos. When you wind the film, the first 2 or 3 shots, if this isn't rotating, you better look again, make sure that the tab didn't pop off. So let me go get the dark bag. I'll shove this in there, open the back, and see what happened. Hang on. If you don't have one of these, they're not that expensive. Otherwise, I think the other alternative is finding a very dark room in your house, well, a completely dark room in your house. A bathroom with no windows and a door that seals pretty good and doesn't let a lot of light underneath. Otherwise, because if I open the back of this thing, I've ruined the film. So I'm putting her in the bag. Let me tilt it down a little bit. Going to find the zipper. Zip up the bag. Fold over the bag. Probably turn it over again just to keep the open end. Now there's 2 like sleeve-like things here where you just stick your arms through. These things do come in handy. Like I said, unless you have a very dark room with a nice big table. Okay, opening the bag. I'm gonna pop the crank rewind knob on this one. You pop it up and it opens the back. And there's my film. All okay, all right. It popped off the spool because I didn't use a good enough piece of tape. So I'm going to close the back up, and I'm going to go get my reels and my film developing tank, and I'm going to go ahead and do that because, well, I mean, I got to do something, right? Okay, hang on. Okay, this is a developing tank. You put your film in here on these reels. You roll it onto one of these reels, put them in there, put the lid on. You pour your developer. You do this in the dark bag or in a dark room. And then when you're ready, you've got your developer, your stop bath, your fixer. You go through the chemical process. And then when you're all done, you rinse it off and you pull it out and it's developed film. if everything goes well. So I'm going to stick this in the bag. Where's the zipper? Other side. With me? This is kind of how stuff goes. It's more of a me thing. Photography isn't really this hard. I'm just one of those people that makes things hard for himself because of my attention span and my, you know, how I'm always in a hurry and I never want to slow down and I never feel like I have time because so many things I'm interested in and so many things I need to be doing that, you know, this isn't one of those needs. This is just sort of a want. And I'm not a good time manager. Okay, arms are in, tank is in, camera's still in there. So, pull out one of them reels. These metal reels, I learned how to load film on them in high school. They, some people just really struggled with that for some reason. All right, I got to press the button on the bottom of the camera, so I'm gonna literally pull the film. As I pull the film, it's gonna unroll from that take-up reel. Get my fingers all over it, which probably isn't good for it, my greasy fingers. But hey, this is just an experiment. What was I saying? Oh, the metal reels. The metal reels. Loading the film on them. If you don't, if it kinks up a little bit while you're loading it on the reel, which it can, the film, you know, it sort of rolls around a spool, and the film will touch itself in a couple of spots, and it'll screw up the. If film's touching when you're developing, it messes up. There'll be a mark, some kind of blotch. All right, so I'm going to take that piece of tape off of there that failed me. And I've got the square cut end of the film. Now I got to feed it in. There's a little clip in the center of the reel. You bend the film a little bit, curve it a bit so it'll fit into the reel. Squeeze it under that pin. Keep squeezing the film just a little bit to give it a little bit of a bend. And then start rolling with one hand and guiding the film with the other. Or just holding the film with the other. I'll do a video on this at some point. Listen for it. You start hearing crinkle and crunch, you know it's not going in there the right way. I should have some music in the background for this part. Okay, I'm on. I'm going to tear off that little film tab at the end because it doesn't really stay into the reel very well. I don't want it touching anything. Okay. This was about I think I got 14, 15 pictures out of the roll. Okay, it's on the reel. Put it in the tank. Where's that other reel? It needs to go in there too, just so I don't lose it. All right, whatever. Where's the lid? Okay. Now, is the lid on tight? Because if it ain't, light will sneak in there. All right, I think I got it. Oh, it's hot in there. Humid. That's probably not good for the film. There's my piece of tape that came off. All right, tank, lid on. Camera back open. See, there's my film holder or film cassette. Well, there's no film in it because it all ended up on this side. It pulled out and was just wrapped around that end. So this is an old Ilford XG-1 black and white film cartridge. When I worked at Ritz Camera years ago, which I discussed nostalgically in another video, we would get these and we would keep them because they were reusable. You could pop the ends off and you can reload your film. Most of the consumer color film cartridges, you know, once they tore that open to get the film out, actually they didn't. They would stick a sticky something or other in the slot here and pull the tab out and then tape it to the cards that would feed it into the 1 hour processing machine. So if you did open one of those Kodak color or anybody's color film, the ends were crimped on and it ruined the thing. But this is made for the ends pop off. and then the little doohickey comes out, and you can put that in a bulk film loader, roll film on it. And bulk film is, God, film is so expensive now. Bulk film is cheaper, even now. But I've got some old black and white stuff I probably bought, oh God, 10 years ago now, before the prices went nuts. And it still works, I think. So, let's see if this thing's working. See that? See, there's batteries in there. If there was no batteries in there, it would not do this. Now, what? So it's in auto. I don't know what meter reading it's giving me, but let me adjust it to a point where it probably won't like what I've done. Well, okay, that was a very slow shutter speed. Let's go the other way. No, it's still working. Okay, so even at full aperture or minimum aperture, the light in here is good enough where the camera can handle it. Anyway, it's a good sounding camera. This is just a good, solid camera in beautiful condition that seems to work perfectly. It's pretty smooth. So enough about that. So, Minolta XG-1, aperture priority, consumer model, nice feel. Seems to work really nice. Didn't cost me much. Upgraded 1.4 aperture 50mm Rocore X lens. And film in the tank. So we'll hopefully get to develop that here in the next day or two and see what happens. I've got the Nickermat video that I made, which I took some pictures at the beach with some old color film. There again, nothing creative. Really didn't enjoy the pictures very much, so I put some black and white film in it, and I ran out and what did I shoot? Oh, I went to a winery with some old barns, really neat place, and attempted to get some pictures that were interesting. And I haven't developed those yet because I don't want to screw them up, so I'm going to use this film to test my developer, which is not quite as old as me. It should still be good. It's a process. So when I'm done this, I will then develop the film from the Nickermat, and my videos are getting all out of sequence now. The Nickermat photo shoot came before this one, but the film developing for this one's going to come first, and then the Nickermat, and then maybe I'll get one or two pictures I'm proud of and show it to you, or maybe I'll never make another video again. Time for dinner. See you all in a while. The Old Guy Studios are temporarily unavailable right now because the nephew needs some temporary housing in between an apartment and a luxury dream home that I'll be jealous of, I'm sure. But so I developed my film. I spared you the whole process. About 10 minutes in the developer, a minute in the stop bath, and 10 minutes in the fixer. And I'm rinsing now. You rinse pretty extensively to get all that residual chemical off, but I have images. The negatives look a little dense, but hey, I got negatives. Maybe they're not so dense. Maybe that's what they're supposed to look like. But I'll get them dried off, which will take a little while, because the emulsion side is it holds moisture and it's a little gummy, so you have to let it dry completely. Here's where you curve your fingers to roll it onto the reel. Anyway, talked about that earlier. But I'm going to rinse some more. I'm going to put a little photo flow on there, which is supposed to combat water spots, because tap water, will leave spots on things. Then we'll dry them off and take a look and scan them and see what happens. And out of the dark room, which I call the bathroom, and here is one of my short strips of negatives. And as you can see, everything came out pretty good. This film is called Kentmere 400. Film speed's 400, obviously. It's probably analogous to Kodak Tri-X. And what I'm doing now that I have negatives, I have a few pieces I don't know, I still haven't counted the pictures yet. I think they were about 15 exposures, give or take. Scanning them on my very out-of-date Epson V370. It's got a negative holder inside where you lay your negative in, dust it furiously because dust shows up on these things, something awful. And then you work with the software on the computer to scan it. So anyway, back to raw scans. So I took this before I left the office, library, museum, whatever I'm calling it something different on different days. This is the shot that I took where the camera was not letting me take the picture because it was giving me an overexposure warning. But I flipped the A up to +2 so that the camera knew I was trying to overexpose. The reason I did that because it was a very backlit subject. That water can was in the shade. And it actually worked out. Go figure. There's a shot outside. Don't ask. It's just something that's hanging up out there. This was a little solar thing, a little plastic Mickey Mouse where if it sat in the sun long enough, a light would illuminate on the camera at night. I don't think it works anymore, but Mickey's face is a little overexposed, but there's detail there in the highlights. This was a fail because the depth of focus was so shallow, but that's okay. Just a random archery target that my daughter abandoned years ago when she went to college. Stack of wood. And the reason I'm so tickled to death about these isn't because they're award winners, but, you know, they came out. And I was using old film, old chemicals, an old camera. You know, I mean, everything worked just enough, I guess. I might have overdeveloped just a little bit just to kind of hedge my bet, but I think when you develop film, there's a lot of slop involved where you're going to get something, even if you screw up a little bit. Because at the time of the development, a lot of times it depends on temperature of the chemicals. It depends on the film that you're developing. It depends on the way you shot it. Did you overexpose it much? Did you not? You know, what brand is it? Anyway, but you could probably just, you know, develop anything for 10 minutes and you'd end up with something. But this was funny. This here was the last picture on the roll, and obviously I didn't have quite enough film because the bottom edge of the film was ruined because it was sticking out of the camera, I guess, or didn't get exposed. Anyway, it was the last. The picture before it should have been the last one, but I stretched it. When you load your own film and, you know, you're sloppy, you kind of get stuff like this. But hey, it came out. So, and I kind of like this one. You know, it's just the slop I have laying around way in the back of the property. And I was so with a 50mm 1.4, you can get a real shallow depth of focus. So the woods behind the wheelbarrow there are all kind of fuzzed out, which is what I was shooting for. If you look at a professional photographer, especially wedding photographers, they'll take a lot of pictures where the back is really fuzzed out because they're using lenses with a really wide aperture, which will give you that shallow depth of focus. It's a really neat effect. And I talked earlier about people who take bland or pictures of bland things, and you look at them and you go, "Hey, that's cool." And you know, my stack of wood here is almost like that. It's just it's a stack of wood, and I took a picture of it with black and white film, and it almost really kind of interesting. If I bump up the contrast a little bit, it might look really nice. This one here, the trees are a little white, little overexposed on the leaves, but that's probably not a hard fix either. So yeah, and I like this one. It's just, you know, it's symmetrical. I like it. And this one's kind of cool. So, tickled to death. Minolta XG-1, $25 thrift store camera. Picked it up. Wound the shutter a few times. It's a mechanical shutter. The shutter works without the battery, but the meter doesn't. So, you know, the lens was clear. It didn't look all schmutzy inside. Sometimes lenses get fungus in them, believe it or not, and they'll seem blotchy and spotty on the glass. You know, look on the bottom, no scratches. So this thing either was never used or spent its whole life in a camera case. No dings on the corners. that's the kind of thing you'll find damage where people drop them or just were rough on them. No scratches on the back leather, which I told you, this particular camera is really kind of soft. So it's just I mean, it's a cheap consumer level camera. Nothing professional, nothing too fancy, just affordable. But man, this is my new favorite camera for the moment because I actually took some good pictures with it. And everything worked out. So thank you all for watching. I really appreciate it. Old guy, old camera. I'll be back soon with another old camera and an older guy. Thank you.